Welcome to Mile High Report Radio Horse Tracks. And now, here's what's happening in Broncos country.
Man, I really thought, I don't know if you want to put this on me or if I should put this on the Broncos. I'm probably just going to blame myself for getting my hopes up like that. But I really thought that the Broncos were actually going to pull it off against the Chiefs today and end this massive losing streak that they have against them that dates all the way back to 2015. That is now 8 years ago. Happy New Year, guys. New Year sailed the kind of same Broncos, but there's a little bit of differences, and I got a statement for you. 2 statements. One of them is false. Jerry Roseburg is the future coach of the Denver Broncos. Future head coach. No interim, future head coach. And Russell Wilson can still be the franchise quarterback that the Broncos desperately needs. I'm telling you right now. One of those statements is false. There's one that's absolutely true. We'll be talking about that this week on the Overreactions. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this Monday edition of Horse Tracks. I'm your host, Ross, and it's Monday, January 2nd. And it's time to talk about the Broncos against the Chiefs. Man, what a game this was. I mean, I gotta say that it was actually almost enjoyable to watch the Broncos for once. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot wrong with this team, but it was semi-enjoyable, and I had the best time in a while watching the Broncos. Heck, I don't know, in a while, we'll see. You know what? Is this the best game the Broncos have played all season? Man, I don't know. I don't know if I have a real answer for that one. I know you guys probably do. Maybe I'll talk about them articles or one of them this week, of course. But let's go ahead and get into things because we're going to take a look at the game. Some of the numbers coming from it. A couple quotes from Courtland Sutton and Russell Wilson, and the latest injury news coming out of Sunday. So let's get into things because this is one of the very few times where the Broncos were mostly enjoyable to watch. While on offense, there are some noticeable changes. Noticeable changes have already been made. Progress is already visible for the Broncos with Rosberg taking over as interim head coach, with Nathaniel Hackett getting fired, with their offensive line coach getting fired, with special teams coach getting fired, making these moves. And it's just nice to not see Hackett's hand on this offense. But even with all that, there's still some old things that we know and hate, and we saw those on the field. One of them being, before we get to new, let's talk about the old and what we are still seeing from the Denver Broncos. Of course, not all these issues could be solved by making coaching changes. There are some legit personnel changes that need to be made, but there are and I guess that's my little preface. These things still do exist. So the offensive line still sucks in pass protection. They gave up 4 sacks for 32 yards. They gave up a near instant pressure right up the middle on the last offensive play of the game for the Denver Broncos that made Russell Wilson kind of force him to throw a bad pass. They lost the game. I mean, don't get me wrong. That should have been pass interference, or not pass interference. We'll get to pass interference, but that should have been roughing the passer. I mean, with the Chiefs throwing Russell Wilson, slamming to the ground, I'm not saying that should or should not be a penalty. I'm not going to make the argument right now. The only argument I'm going to make is per NFL rules and per the typical amount of times why the NFL calls these plays or calls these penalties. This is definitely a roughing the passer penalty. It absolutely should have been. By the letter of the law, by what the league typically does, this is always being called roughing the passer. Just imagine how quick the rest would have been to throw that flag if it was the Broncos throwing down Patrick Mahomes like this. There's a Tom Brady, a Aaron Rodgers. Heck, I might as well just list every single other quarterback in the league, because 99.9% of the time, that play is a penalty. That play should have been the first down for the Broncos. They should have still been alive with about a minute and a half left to drive on the game, get them that much closer to at least field goal range. At least. This, among other penalties, screwed the Broncos in this game. Among bad calls, screwed the Broncos in this game. And this was easily the most irritating game of the season, penalty-wise. The refs were awful in this game. There's my little rant, but man, it sucked. It really, really sucked. And I am not a fan of these refs at all. They freaking blew it. That's one thing I'm sure you guys all think as well. I'm sure you're just waiting for me to go off on that. So there you go. We kind of get out of the way early, but I'll probably get back on that train a little bit later. The other thing about the Broncos that's still old news and still hurting them is the Broncos. Still pretty dang bad on third down. In this game against the Chiefs, they converted 3 of 12 third down attempts. That's, for all you math majors out there, that's 25%. Also, for good notice, they were 1 for 2 on fourth down. The Broncos just sucked on third down all season long. Nothing's changed. The league average is around 39%. Not only this season, but since I think it was 2001 or 2003, from like that period until last season, the league average ended up being 39%. So that's typically what the third down conversion rate is going to be around. Guess where the Broncos are? I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The Broncos are a league worst by a decent margin. They only are converting 29% of third downs. 29%. That's horrible. And of course, one of the oldest things that the Broncos have been doing since week 1 is, once again, they lose a one-score game. This is now the 9th time that has happened this season. The Broncos now fall to 3-9 in one-score games on the year. Not great. Not great at all. And it's just heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, gut punch every single week. Thank you, Denver, for at least being in these games. But sometimes I almost rather it's just a blowout like the Rams and you didn't really have to get invested into a loss. Albeit a decent-looking loss, a promising loss. But of course, a loss is still a loss. But let's look at the new thing here. And let's look at the reason why there's optimism coming out of Denver. The offensive play calling actually looked decent. It actually played into Russell Wilson's strengths. Would you imagine that you would actually be trying to play into the strengths of the quarterback that you gave $250 million to? Could you imagine? Why would you do something like that? Why would you want to play to his strengths instead of forcing this guy who's had a system that's worked for him for his entire career? Why wouldn't you use that one? Or why would you use that system when you could just force him into a new system that he clearly isn't good at and just try to make him conform? Because that's what the Broncos have been doing all year. And so it was refreshing, man. Like I said earlier, Nathaniel Hackett's hand clearly was not on this game, and this is why. The Broncos were calling plays that got Russell Wilson on the move with rollouts. Plenty of read option thrown in there. They even got him going in the run game too. You haven't really even seen that all season long. This was one of the best completion percentage games for Russell Wilson this year. I would definitely attribute that to play calling. This is fourth best. He finished the game with 68.4% completion percentage. His highest game was 77.4, and that was against the Raiders in Week 6. That also kind of goes into the fact that the Broncos should probably be, especially in the last game, you got to give Albert O a few more chances. He's way better in the past game than a guy like Eric Saubert probably is. At least he's more of a weapon. Clearly, we all have a dislike for him because of his extreme drop issues he had early on in the season. We haven't really seen much from him since, but with the injury, gosh, it wasn't that horrible news. Was it on Saturday that we found out that Greg Dulcich is going on the IR with a hamstring injury? Let me know how many times. Gosh, if you guys want to die, you should take a drink every single time a Broncos player goes down with a hamstring injury. Thanks, Lauren. You really suck at your job. Can't wait to see you gone, buddy. But especially with Greg Dulcich being out last game, you might as well see what you can get from Albert O. See if you can scrap anything. I mean, he was really only brought onto the Broncos because of his relationship with Drew Lock. So instead of him just being a lost pick, try to do something with him. He's an athletic guy. He runs. He's a good route runner. Has speed. Has the size. Might as well try to use him a little bit more, at least I think there. But going back to Russell Wilson, and especially when it comes to game into the run game, this was the most success we've seen him in terms of rushing touchdowns in the game since 2019. He had 2 rushing touchdowns against New Orleans in 2019. He had 2 against the Chiefs on Sunday. The most he's had in his career is 3. That's happened once, and that was against the Bills all the way back in 2012. So he's now had 2 games in his career with 2 rushing touchdowns and 1 with 3 rushing touchdowns. So this is legit success, and I would love to see more of this, especially if you're not able to do a whole lot with the offensive line next year, which you really better freaking be able to. Otherwise, we're screwed, and there's really not going to be many changes as long as this offensive line is still in the state that it is. All right, before we get to some of the quotes here, just take a look at some of the numbers that describe this game the most. So, first number I have for you guys is 6. And that is interceptions this season for Justin Simmons. That is good for the most in his career. Still 1 game more to go to, so we'll see if we can add on to that. His previous high was 5, and he accomplished that feat in both 2021 and 2020. Justin Simmons is one of the best, if not the best, safety in the league. He continues to prove it, and the Broncos just when it comes to interceptions, the Broncos have been on Patrick Mahomes this year. Patrick Mahomes threw a total of 4 interceptions against the Broncos this season, 1 in this most recent game, 3 in the last game. He threw 1 to Patrick Surtain, 1 to Justin Simmons, and 2 to Josie Jewell. So it's nice to see the Broncos at least have success in that category against Patrick Mahomes. In the win category, not so much, but would it really be a Broncos season or game if you weren't trying to find the moral victories here? I don't think so. Next number is going to be 328, and that was the pass yards given up by Denver in this game, which is good for the most passing yards given up by the Broncos on the season. The Broncos have only given up an average of 205.1 passing yards a game until Sunday. It looked bad, and that it was like, 8 receivers that all caught a pass against the Denver Broncos. No, I think it might have been more than that. It was 10. Actually, if you want to count Patrick Mahomes, it was 11. 11 guys caught a pass against the Broncos. That sucks. You know, the funny thing is, I mean, they had 320 yards, but only an average of 11.3 yards per reception. So not bad, but that's also what happens when the Chiefs complete almost 30 passes. The Broncos did not have a strong game in that category. Last number of the game is going to be 4,948. And that's the amount of rushing yards that Russell Wilson has now accrued over his NFL career. And that's good for 3rd most rushing yards by a quarterback all time. He passes Randall Cunningham in this game with his 27 rushing yards that he had against Chiefs. And he is only trailing Cam Newton, who is in 2nd place, and Mike Vick for the most rushing yards all time. He has a very small chance of catching Cam Newton, and I don't think anyone will ever catch Mike Vick. Now, before we get to the latest injury news for the Denver Broncos coming out of this game, let's hear from a couple of the players. First off, we're going to be listening to Courtland Sutton speak after the game.
Apparently, when I asked the official that threw the flag, he said that I pushed the defender in the chest to make the catch, and that's where the flag came from. But, you guys can watch the film and see what happened.
Yep, he's just kind of venting some frustrations, although he probably does it in a more diplomatic sense than a lot of Broncos fans, than a lot of ways that we did when it comes to venting our frustration. It was a horrible call, and it cost the Broncos a 50-yard reception. And one of the very key plays in this game that could have changed the overall outcome on the scoreboard. I feel like Courtland Sutton has to be really, really disappointed in the refs this game. Next, we're going to listen to Russell Wilson. This is him speaking on his teammates, showing support from him during this week leading up to the game.
It meant the world to me. It meant the world to me because I give my all every day. I don't know anything less. And so I'm grateful for these guys because, they've worked their butts off. And for them to have my back, Jerry, he means the world to me, how much he's worked at his craft every day. Kendall, KJ, Tim Patrick, Courtland, other guys, all I want to do is help this team win and us find a way to do it. And I know we're going to overcome all those obstacles. And I'm not going to blink because I know who I am. I know the dedication I have for this game and how much it means to me. It's meant the world to me since I was yay high. When I was throwing my dad's football when he played for the Chargers, and he had painted up football when I was in the family room breaking glass and all that, and throwing the ball to my brother. The game means just as much as it did back then, and it means just as much now, if not more. And it's because of those guys in the locker room and their love. Garrett Bowles isn't even playing, but what he meant to me, what he said, and so many other guys. So like I said, I believe, and all I want to do is help this team, and we're going to go somewhere, and I'm excited about it, and it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, it was good to hear Russell Wilson just kind of speak on this. It clearly means a lot to him, getting a little bit emotional there, and it's just nice to hope, especially with, in my thoughts, that Russell Wilson can still be the franchise quarterback that this team needs. It's good to see that his receiving corps and the players around him are still supporting him, especially publicly as well. And I believe in when he says that he just wants to do what's best for this team. He wants to help this team win. I believe it 100%. Russell Wilson is a worker, and we've seen that his whole career. So I just hope that the play improves next season, and that hopefully the perception around him can start to change. Now, just before we cap off here, to the latest injury news for the Broncos. 4 injuries happened during this game. Who's surprised about that one? Dalton Risner, he suffered a hyperextended elbow and he left the stadium in a sling. Marlon Mack, he went down with a hamstring injury early. Shocker on that one during a kickoff return. He left the game there. PJ Locke, he went down with a ankle injury, and Damari Mathis has suffered a concussion. Yeah, wouldn't be a Broncos game without injuries. Really hope these guys just, what you're going to do, probably going to keep them out the last game of this season. The Broncos are going to have a team composed of 98% third stringers. And probably they've broken the 20-man mark with Greg Dulcich being added to the IR. They broke the 20-man mark on the year that's made to the IR. They're probably going to get 21. I think 21 is at least going to tie the league record for most players on the injury reserve during a season. Wouldn't be, knowing the Broncos, they're going to break a record. They're going to break that record. Going to add a couple more guys onto that. Well, actually, I think you only put 21 on the season, so might at least tie it. I don't know. End of the story is that the Broncos have so many injuries, and I really hope that we see a change in this next season. Easily has been one of the biggest killers from them this year, and they're not really going to be a good team if this keeps up, of course. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for tuning into this edition of Horse Tracks. I hope you guys had a fantastic new year. This is going to be the year of new beginnings for all you guys out there. I know that for a fact, and it's going to be a great year. Super happy that you're allowing me into your eardrums as a way to ring in the new year. thank you guys so much for your support. Go ahead, check us out at milehighreport.com. Follow us on all social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Mile High Report. Catch me on the Instagram. Yours truly is running that bad boy. So you can reach out to me with anything that is on your mind. I do my best to respond to DMs or comments. And of course, you can catch me most Mondays on Twitch. That is twitch.tv/MHR_live. And you could catch me a couple articles a week. Do the weekly power rankings. Those drop on Tuesdays. And then fan overreactions that drop on Thursdays or Fridays. But like I said, I hope you guys have a fantastic year this year. 2023 is going to be big. We'll see you guys in the next podcast, whichever one you're listening to. Go ahead, follow if you haven't already. And with that being said, go Broncos.